At the beginning of this chapter, we find the animals having awakened from the euphoria of their victory over Mr. Jones to face an entirely new reality. The farm had become theirs. No more humans to order them or lash their backs, and this alone was enough to fill them with enthusiasm. The animals opened their eyes to a dream turned reality and began to feel a heavy yet exciting responsibility. Thus, the early days of Animal Farm began in an atmosphere of organized activity. Every animal started working with double effort, as if wanting to prove to the others that it deserved this new freedom. Boxer, the horse, worked with extraordinary diligence, pulling heavy loads tirelessly, repeating his new motto, "I will work harder," until he became an example of enthusiasm and devotion in the eyes of the other animals. Amid this collective labor, the leadership of the pigs naturally stood out. Napoleon and Snowball began managing the farm's affairs, setting plans for planting and harvesting, and leading the meetings. No pig actually participated in the hard toil, but the animals did not pay attention to that at first, as they saw the pigs as the smartest, with the task of thinking and planning. Snowball, in particular, was eager for cultural change. He began teaching the animals the alphabet and reading, writing letters on the barn wall and explaining them in daily lessons. Some animals, like the sheep and chickens, learned no more than a word or two, but they still felt proud just for trying. Napoleon, on the other hand, seemed less interested in these lessons, but he encouraged another project when he took a group of young puppies away from their mothers, claiming he would take care of raising and educating them himself. The matter seemed a little strange, but no one at the time questioned why Napoleon wanted to raise the dogs alone. As for the rest of the animals, they enjoyed every evening with revolutionary songs, especially the song "Beasts of England," which continued to ring in their ears as a daily reminder that what they were doing was bigger than just a harvest or building a fence. They were living the dream with complete sincerity. And so, by the end of this chapter, the farm seemed as if it had been born anew. Clean fields, a successful harvest, rule lists hung on the wall, and pigs writing and managing. It seemed to everyone that the revolution had succeeded and that the new system was more just and brighter than anything they had known before. But beneath this surface, seeds of dangerous differences had already begun slowly to grow to show their effects in the coming chapters.
When we look at what happened in this chapter, we find that George Orwell draws the beginning of the establishment of the new system with clever precision. The revolution ended quickly, but what follows is far more dangerous. How will life be reorganized? Who will actually take leadership? Here, the first dividing lines appear between collective enthusiasm and individual interests. Boxer, that strong, kind-hearted horse, quickly turns into a symbol of the loyal worker who toils without complaint. Even when the new system imposes double burdens, all Boxer repeats is, "I will work harder." Through him, Orwell exposes how the working classes often fall prey to the new ideology without noticing. The revolution did not abolish hard labor. In fact, it sometimes made it harsher, but Boxer accepted it willingly because he believed it served the entire farm. And this is the tragedy of every honest worker who ties his dignity to his productivity, even if he is exploited. In contrast, Snowball appeared more culturally active. He wanted to teach the animals reading and writing, and here he symbolizes all revolutionary intellectuals who believe that change cannot be complete without raising the awareness of the masses. But our first observation is that most of the animals remained ignorant or nearly illiterate despite his great effort. The chickens and sheep, for example, memorized only a few simple lines, then went about repeating them everywhere without deep understanding. This is an accurate picture of how crowds are easily guided when they pick up only slogans from ideas. Napoleon in this chapter played a more cunning role. He was not concerned with the education campaigns or stirring speeches. Rather, he focused on a silent strategic step. He took the small puppies and raised them himself away from the eyes of others. Here is a clear projection onto building a future security apparatus loyal only to him. No one questioned him, and perhaps no one even noticed the danger of this matter at all. This is a move that has been historically repeated in many regimes when the leader establishes his secret power early on while still pretending to participate in a collective rule. Squealer also appeared in the background, always ready to justify the leadership's decisions, even if he did not have a major scene in this chapter. His constant presence means that propaganda is always prepared to explain anything that happens and to convince the animals that everything the pigs decide is for the good of the farm. As for the rest of the animals, they remained immersed in the euphoria of revolutionary songs, working, singing, and dreaming. They did not ask much about the details of decisions, nor did they demand clear reports on what was happening. They were content to see themselves finally free, singing their song, believing they were living in the system they had chosen. This, in its essence, is an accurate depiction of the state of peoples after any revolution, when they become busy with symbols and anthems instead of watching whether the principles of the revolution are actually being implemented. And so we reach a frightening conclusion that Orwell plants early on. The danger does not lie in the revolution failing at the hands of external enemies, but in the way power is quietly and slowly reshaped internally, while the workers and the working classes are drowning in hope, singing, and exhausting labor. What happens behind the walls, like Napoleon raising the puppies, is what will later determine their fate without them realizing it until it's too late.
And in the background of this scene, the pigs were managing affairs with quiet cleverness. Napoleon, Snowball, and Squealer began laying plans and distributing tasks. The rest of the animals did not object, as they were convinced that the pigs were the smartest and therefore the most entitled to lead, organize, and think. Snowball in particular took upon himself an ambitious project to teach the animals reading and writing, drawing letters on the barn wall and holding evening lessons. The scene seemed like a new cultural dawn, but the truth was that most of the animals remained nearly illiterate, picking up only a few words and repeating them in groups, just as the peasant masses in revolutionary Russia repeated slogans like peace, bread, land, without a deep understanding of what socialism actually meant. Napoleon, on the other hand, was not concerned with these cultural lessons. He chose another path. He took the puppies and raised them in isolation. This simple step, which passed without much attention from the other animals, was in reality an accurate image of building a security apparatus loyal only to the leader himself. Just as Stalin established his own organs inside the Bolshevik Party and raised cadres in the shadows before they later appeared as a striking force tightening their grip on the revolution itself. Boxer, the noble poor creature, continued to work with doubled enthusiasm. He is the symbol of the worker who believes that salvation lies in more toil, even if his master changed from czar to party. Millions of Russian workers received the Bolshevik Revolution with Boxer spirit, working in the factories and collective farms of the new state, believing that all they produced was for building the just socialist homeland, without noticing that in reality they had come to toil under a system stricter than the previous czarist regime, albeit bearing new names and slogans. And the song the animals continued to chant every evening, Beasts of England, was like the Internationale in Russia or the Marseillaise in France, an anthem that creates a collective emotional state, giving them the feeling they were living a project bigger than their individuality, temporarily diverting their eyes from troubling questions about who was actually planning and who truly benefited. Thus, in this chapter, Orwell clearly shows us how revolutions quickly turn from a collective popular dream into a reality run by an organized few who plant anthems in the hearts of the masses while secretly preparing the real structures of power. Exactly as happened in Russia when the Bolsheviks took power. They taught the people to read, to a degree, taught them songs and slogans, but at the same time established a dreadful security apparatus, and the collective factories and farms came under a grip stronger than they ever were under the Tsar.
And so Orwell places us before the bitter truth that the superficial change of the system does not necessarily mean a change in the essence of power, and that when the masses become preoccupied with exhausting labor, anthems, and hopes, they may miss the moment when a new structure of tyranny emerges within the very cloak of the revolution itself.